welcome to Milking Soul Ministries. We are back with Romans, and this week we're diving right into the text. I am really excited with all of the truth that Romans holds, but I realize it can be really overwhelming. I struggle with it. So what I am trying to do with the questions, which were on last week's intro post, the ones for this week were on last week's intro post. The ones that are on the post today are for next week's post, if that makes sense. So I'm going to work through them, sort of cover them, and post my notes for them the week after I give them to you, present them to you. So the link below will link to last week's post, which has the questions I'm going to cover today, if that makes sense. I realize that Romans is really rich and it can just be super overwhelming. And so the questions are helping us sort of pare it down into individual nuggets. They're things that sort of convicted me or touched my heart. That doesn't mean that they're what is the ultimate truth in here or what is what you would pull out necessarily, which is also okay. But they were just sort of what convicted me and challenged me at this time. And so I wanted to share that with you just like I did through the book of John. I realized that in the first 7 verses, there were different iterations of called or calling or being set apart for his will. There are actually 6 different times that there is sort of a point or a mention of being called, of your calling, and I just was really encouraged by that. And so I spent my week thinking a lot about what it means to me to be called for his glory, first of all, because that's a really big deal, sort of to be chosen to represent him and to be a vehicle of his. But then what does that calling look like for me? I'm not a singer. I mean, I love to sing, but I'm not good at singing. No one's going to want to listen to me on stage. And so the idea of my calling is definitely not singing. Is my calling writing? Quite possibly. Is my calling doing these vlogs? Quite possibly. I don't know. I don't know how concrete of an idea I can have at 25 years old. I know that my calling is to love deeply and love greatly, and I'm trying to do that really well. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm trying to do that. And so just realizing what brings you joy, what you love to do, and knowing that you can do that to glorify him. And that's just a really awesome idea. And that you were made to do that and called to do that. Awesome. So awesome. That said, I know that part of following Jesus, part of the sort of trepidation people have in saying, yes, Jesus is my Lord and Savior, is the idea that there are so many rules. It can feel like such a struggle, like there is no room to have any fun. There's no room to enjoy myself. And the law was covered in chapters 1, 2, sort of in transition in there. The idea of it establishing standards of obedience for us, the idea that it is a guideline in which we can operate, but it's not to take away all of our joy. I think of sort of those projects in high school where you get or in college, probably college is a better example, where you go in and you get the syllabus, and on the first day it says you're going to have to write a 10-page paper on anything to do with the topic of this course. And so there's some rules, the format that you use, the way that you do your bibliography at the end, the page number, all those things. There's formal rules to sort of give you some guidelines, but you're free to do with what you want within those parameters. And I think that's what God's trying to do for us. He's trying to set up sort of a safe space for us to go out and do our calling wholeheartedly. He's trying to set up an area in which we can operate, and in setting up those boundaries, I think of it as a child where you're like, okay, kid, we can play in this area of the house, and you can have free reign for this area of the house. And you don't set them up in the kitchen because there's a stove there, and there's fire, and there's water. And so the best thing to do is to set them up in an area that's safe. And that's not to destroy their life. That's not to make them bored or to make them feel like they don't have any freedom. But instead, it's to say this is a safe space in which you can have autonomy. And I think that's what God's trying to do for us. He's trying to save us the hassle of the dangers. Obviously, that didn't work out well in the Garden of Eden, and so we still today are struggling with it. But it's important to realize that he's not, it's like our parents, God, being teenagers. I guess maybe I'll be in the forever stage of teenagedom with God. That they would give us a parameter and it would just be like, they don't understand. And I just imagine God sitting up in heaven saying, I do understand. Actually, you don't understand. And so I'm trying to be okay with that. Trying is the key word there. Not that good at it. But I realized that the way that circumcision was talked about, and I'm going metaphorical here, so please track with me. Or if you don't want to go metaphorical, pause the video now. Quit the video now, because you're going to be like, this chick, really? The idea of sort of circumcising one's heart. So Jews used to circumcise themselves, like back in this day, were circumcising themselves as an outward display, or circumcising their children as an outward display of dedication. Sort of a way to say, I'm honoring that covenant that you've made with my people, because there were covenants between God and the Jews. And I think today we have similar sort of acts of circumcision that are outward displays of our honoring that covenant. It might be going out with our friends on Friday night and not getting drunk and puking with them, but instead going and offering to be the DD, or just being a good example and having, 1 or 2 drinks over the course of a few hours. It could be being the only virgin in your group of friends. I know that was something that really set me apart. It was also something that was sort of just an outward display of the promise that I made to God and to my future husband. So just those ideas of circumcising our hearts from those fleshly desires. And we all have them. I'm still over here clipping away at parts of me that just, I want things. I'm a wanter. I don't know. I can't distinguish between want and need very often. And so I'm working really hard on doing that. And I realize it's clipping parts of sort of the culture I was brought up in and myself away. And that's hard. But it's rich and it's important. And so I realized that there's, different ways to circumcise. You can abstain, say, from sex or alcohol or shopping. You can just be honest. You can remove sort of the secrecy behind things. Say you struggle with lust, maybe jealousy or anger. Just being able to be honest about that, removing the veil between you and whoever you decide to be accountable or transparent with. That's a totally new and sort of cutting away of your protection there. And then just committing time. So creating space. I realize that it's really important to me to have my Bible study. It's important to me to have time with Jason, just sort of fellowshipping. And sometimes that's about God and sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're just having dinner together complaining about work. But just going about those procedures, sort of those tasks, I guess, in an effort to honor the commitment that God made to you, and that you are making to him. That said, this is going a little long, I'm sorry. That said, I want to give you the verse of the week. It's Romans chapter 1, verse 11, and it says, I long to see you so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong. That is, that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. And this week I'm going to just pray very intentionally over that mutual encouragement, because that's how I feel right now, and I just want to sustain that. I want God to sustain that, actually. So I will see y'all next week. Please, questions, comments, whatever, leave them below, email, Twitter, however you want to do it. And I'll see y'all next week. Bye.